How do you do? Mr. Chunky Larry feels it would be a little unkind to present this podcast without just a little friendly word of warning. We are about to unfold the story of Creature Features, a podcast of science who sought to create a show after its own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, death and spoilers. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It may even give away major plot points. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to, we warned you. Greetings, fellow insomniacs, and welcome to another episode of the Creature Features podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. I am your host, I am your friend in fright, and the guide through all of this creature featuredom. My name is Chunky Larry, and we are, again, well into May of the Dead. We've gotten it going. We're actually doing this. It's happening. We are discussing horror movies all the month of May, all the lovely month of May. And I'm doing something different this time around. And so when I have a guest come on, they're picking the movie. And so everything is on the table, as I said in the last episode, but I'm having the guest pick the movies. And it's making for a really fun and dynamic and different, diverse batch of May of the Dead films. But this one I feel is kind of one of the penultimate of the zombie genre. This one is phenomenal and it's infamous. And I think that it's fitting that I find something that's phenomenal and infamous to talk about with who I'm going to be talking about today, or talking with today. I am going to be talking to one of the coolest fucking people on TikTok. He is a guitarist. He is an artist. He creates fucking Jason masks, dude. This dude is a fucking complete badass, and I fucking love him. He fucking feels like a rebel. A lot of people talk like a rebel. He feels like a rebel. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike, the movie Misfit. How you doing, man?
I'm doing very swell. How are you doing?
I'm good, bro. I'm chilling. And so you and I have something I feel very in common. We both kind of say what it is that we're thinking in the moment that we're thinking it, and it gets us in trouble a lot. and so I follow you on TikTok. I follow you on Instagram, but I've noticed that on Instagram, not on Instagram, on TikTok, you constantly find yourself on fucking TikTok's bad list. How does this happen? What is going on?
I have no clue. I feel like I've been this way for at least 2 years, maybe a little longer now that I think about it. I'm not even doing anything. I'm just posting stuff. It's weird because I feel like I have the opposite problem of a lot of people. I know some people get banned or they get their stuff taken down. TikTok just doesn't show me. It's just like, oh, you're not even worth getting banned. They're like, we'll just hide you from everybody. And it's like, oh, at first didn't think it was a issue. I thought, oh, it's because people would post, oh, have you guys noticed you're not getting seen? I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm not noticing anything. And I was like, oh, I'm not getting seen. And it's been happening more and more lately. And it's like, I'm not really doing anything. I'm trying to, at least stick to the rules as much as I can, maybe bend the rules a little bit. But, I try to keep it funny or entertaining or, whatever. But I'm starting to feel like George Costanza, where like they fired me and they didn't tell me. And I'm just showing up to work every day. And I'm like, geez, I was like, here I'm trying to stick out in a good way.
Yeah.
And it's just my stuff gets hidden. It's always the, 200 views, which, hey, I'm grateful for 200 views, but is it really 200 views or is it like 2 views? But in TikTok world, it's, 200. I don't know, because half the time if I get 200 views on something, no comments. So I'm like, are they bots? Are they real people? I don't know. And I've noticed that if I get anything more than 200 or 400, I'm like, whoa, but I'm not in the video. So anything that involves me not being in the video will do well.
Kind of fucks with your psyche, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's like,
what the fuck? I'm not like an ugly dude. What the shit is happening?
That's the thing. That's the thing I start questioning. I'm like, maybe I am, maybe I'm TikTok ugly, And it's like, what the weird thing is, I was experimenting for like a good year with like different things. I wasn't using any horror hashtags or anything, or even mentioning the word horror in anything that I posted. And it was kind of working. But, in the horror community, I'm kind of like non-existent too. So I'm like, I don't know which
is like, kind of wild, because one of the things that you do on Instagram that I fucking love is that you have trivia pretty much for every fucking day, and you have a flesh eater day. Mm-hmm. I felt like if I were gonna do a month of zombie films, how am I not gonna get the guy who does a flesh eater fucking on my
I appreciate it.
and so what I want to know is, what was your initial take on zombies? Like how does this start for you?
Dang, that's a tough one. I mean, I could say Michael Jackson's Thriller. That'd be an easy one. Because that really kind of kicked it off for me, because I grew up I'm old, so I grew up in the 80s. So, it was like a plethora of all these movies coming out all at the same time. So I was like discovering them. So, I mean, for Michael Jackson's Thriller alone, that, I was a big fan, so I was like, whoa, Michael Jackson's a zombie and a werewolf. Wow, crazy. And as I started, going through the rabbit hole of horror movies, I started with my Friday the 13th and everything, and and all and so forth. And I discovered Return of the Living Dead somehow. I think it was just right next to something that I was renting, and I was like, wow, this is really, really cool. But it was fun. It was like a fun one. I always compare that one to Jason Lives, maybe because Tom Matthews is in that too. But I'm like, they both have that same vibe of something fun. It's a fun ride. It could be kind of chilling sometimes. But I was like, oh, okay. I was like breaking into the horror scene. I was like, wow. I was like, I have my Jason, I have my Freddy. Now I got this. And at a family reunion that we kind of had, I must have been 7 or something at the time. My aunt's friend was a photographer. He did photography for the family that day, and he somehow got wind of like, oh, your little nephew likes horror movies. And I was like, yeah. I was like, I like Jason. I was like, I like Michael Myers. And Freddy Krueger. And he was kind of like, oh, okay. Like, do you like zombie movies? And I was like, yeah, Return of the Living Dead. Yeah. And then he's like, do you know who George Romero is? And I was like, oh, like, not yet. And he was like, okay. He's like, you should watch a movie called Dawn of the Dead. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, but you should also watch a movie called Zombie. And I was like, okay. And in the back of my mind, I was like, I've seen these boxes at the video store that I have not gotten to yet. Yeah. So I was like, I was working my way to all these different cover boxes, and I was like, okay. I was like, well, luckily my mom and pop shop had them. So, He's like, yeah, he's like, you really got to start watching those. I was like, okay. I was like, I think I'm graduating to a next level. So yeah.
I fucking love it, dude.
Yeah, going to the video store and I was just like, looking at these cool cover boxes and I was like, okay, he mentioned this one and this one and this one. And I had seen Night of the Living Dead, the old black and white version as a kid, but I'd seen it from like one point on. So I never really saw it from the beginning and never knew what it was until after the fact. So yeah, and I just started renting, all out of sequence too, because I didn't know what the order was or anything. But, I think I rented Dawn of the Dead first. And then I was like, whoa. And then I rented Zombie and I was like, oh, and I think, those were the first two that really started to like kind of creep me out. I think a big part of it was the music, the scores, especially Zombie. I think that was the one that just really, kind of freaked me out as a kid, like because it just had that haunting feeling. Same thing with Dawn of the Dead too. Just the beginning, the boom boom, just that bass line, the boom boom. Anything that sounds like a heartbeat, I was just like, oh my god. I was just like, what is this? I was like, these zombies aren't fun. So I was like really enthralled, especially, back then. I'm not sure if you remember, like, just remember how grainy it was on VHS. And then if you had a TV that was like grainy too, it just made it that more.
I mean, but like grainy was fucking normal for us.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like, but these films, they had this. I don't know if it's necessarily the lighting because I've seen them cleaned up now.
Yeah.
There's just a texture to those specific films.
Yeah, I know. It's true. And it was. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say. When I was talking about that with someone else's the lighting.
Yeah.
And it made such a big difference, especially in all those old movies. But I always compared the lighting to, especially Dawn of the Dead, those old meat markets from those days where everything had like that blue, like life-sucking light. I don't know why I'm like meat markets from
like a fluorescent.
Yeah. I remember my grandma taking me and be like, she's like, oh, mijo. And I'd be like, oh my God, I'm here. I'm in the underground.
I love it. But let's get this ball rolling. The way that we do that is we go to the world of the Emdables and we grab ourselves a synopsis. And here is the synopsis for 1979's Zombie, or Zombie 2, whichever you prefer, or Zombie Flesh Eaters, whichever. Whatever you want, Daddy. It's all you. A sailboat arrives in New York without a living soul but a zombie that attacks two guards from the Coast Guard. The daughter of the owner of the ship, Ann Bowles, requests information about her missing father and that was in the Antilles to the detectives that are investigating the crime without success. She meets journalist Peter West and they decide to investigate what might have happened to her father. They travel to Matul with Brian Hull and Susan Barrett in their boat. Once in the tropical island, they meet Dr. David Menard, who is trying to find a cure for the disease that brings the dead back to life, turning them into zombies that eat human flesh, increasing the menace against the group. Now, that was by Claudio Carvalho, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And Claudio is a frequented IMDb contributor, and he usually comes a little rough. I think this one wasn't that bad.
No.
I mean, it kind of gives you everything.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Like, that's not a synopsis, my dog, which actually kind of leads us almost seemingly into our very new segment that you are the second person to do. So I do a thing, and I had started it on TikTok, but I was like, I'm bringing the podcast back, bringing it to the podcast. And this is called Cinema Obscura. And so we just read a synopsis from IMDb that pretty much gives everything away. I would like you to do the antithesis of that. I would like you to, in the vaguest way possible, sell us on 1979's Zombie.
Mine would be pretty short. I was going to say, take a weekend cruise to the island of Matul.
Sounds like a travel brochure.
Yeah,
But I'm fucking here for it. And so I had kind of joked around about this in the synopsis, but this movie has several different fucking names. And part of that is largely due to the fact that Italy is kind of the used car salesman of filmmakers. A very common practice in Italian films is to take something that's popular in the United States, repurpose it, and make it new in a way, but similar as well. So somebody particularly interested in one thing, thinking that they're going to see that one thing, are going to see something completely fucking different. They're going to see these films. And this is like exploitation at its finest. And so Zombie in Italy is Dawn of the Dead. George Romero went to Rome and stayed with Dario Argento. He worked on the script. He showed the script to Dario. Dario liked the script. He wanted to help produce the film. And so he brought in his band Goblin. That's the music that you were talking about when you were talking about Dawn of the Dead. And he cut the film in his own way, and it's called Zombie in Italy. So Zombie was a huge fucking hit in 78. And so elsewhere, Lucio Fulci, who is at this point, he had done a ton of like westerns, he'd done some comedies, he'd done some crime dramas, he'd also done a little bit of giallo, but he hadn't really like gotten into the world of horror in the way that he got into the world of horror. He's now recognized as one of the godfathers of gore, and that is his latter part of his career. But up to this point, he hadn't really delved into that world. And so he's working on this film that is, you know, ostensibly the same film that we see, but they added some changes to the film and decided to call it Zombie 2. And I believe it was originally called Island of the Dead. That was one of the original titles for the film. But when Zombie became the popular film that it became, they ultimately were like, no, this is Zombie 2. And we just got to take some elements, put it in New York for a little bit, just because it makes sense. And, you know, the Italians fucking love New York. And you watch a lot of these Italian films, right?
Yeah.
The fetishistic nature of the way that Italian people film New York is something that I think deserves like a case study, because it's I feel like I see New York more like better through the lens of an Italian filmmaker than I ever did through an American filmmaker. I don't know if you feel the same way, but that is something that I absolutely think, because, and we're going to get into a shit ton of Italian films through the course of this show, but there's this love for that city that it's so interesting to me. And what are your thoughts about Italy and New York?
I could definitely see that. I think because they're probably also looking through it as someone that's not there every day too, probably. Because just even the way they shoot it, you'll get more of the landscape and everything, as opposed to like, someone that's just shooting there all the time. They're kind of just going through it, kind of going through it and just shooting the crowd or people. It
feels a little bit more clinical, right?
Yeah.
And there's this adoration, and I think it's because, and obviously speculating, but I feel that part of it is because they have been told since they were very young, this is the land of opportunity, the land of promise. And, especially the filmmakers in the 70s, that was they grew up in the 40s and the 50s. And, that's, at the tail end of world wars and all this shit. Right. So America is very appealing to somebody growing up in Italy. That's just
right.
My personal observation, because especially the way that they shoot it, and this
yeah, for sure.
absolutely does that. Like the opening sequence where they're doing the harbor patrol and that whole bit, I just, again, it feels like it's way more romanticized New York than New York. And then it's kind of bookended with New York. You
Right.
start you
Yeah.
start New York and you end in New York, and they have that really amazing shot with the zombies going across the bridge, which is totally stolen because it's an Italian production. But
Right.
like again, just there's something about the way that they filmed that city, and I just it's one of the first takeaways that you get because it's the first thing you fucking see.
Right. And then
Um,
the last thing.
let's talk about the fucking violence. I think that
Oh.
this film has kind of a reputation, and I don't know if it's a warranted reputation. There's, I think, really honestly, one specific scene where the violence is like, holy shit. But, you know, aside from that, it seems pretty par for the course. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that one specific scene, I was always like, whoa.
Yeah.
And as far as for the rest of it, I mean, when I first saw it, that was kind of like my first real zombie, one of my first real zombie movies where I was like, oh shoot, I was like, your teeth can do that. I was like, oh, so I mean, by the time I got to Dawn of the Dead and that, I was like, okay, this is standard stuff right here. So yeah, it didn't really affect me too much. I think it was just more of the eye thing. I was just like, oh, and then as the years went on, I kind of learned that Fulci had a thing for eyes.
And honestly, like the way that that whole scene is shot is just, again, the timing of the movements and the framing and
Right, right,
everything
right,
about
right,
that,
right.
like the way that it's cut, it builds and it builds
Oh
and it
yeah,
builds and it crescendos when it goes in, but
yeah,
then it keeps going and she kind of turns her head and fucking pops out, and
right.
it's like, oh, that's fucking beautiful.
Yeah, and it's crazy too. I guess it's the way they do their ADR for a lot of Italian films, or especially Italian films back then. I think because when they're screaming, it's you know everything's at 12 instead of 10, so it's just so loud. So when I first saw that, I think that, or just in the whole movie in general, when all those intense scenes were happening and people were just screaming, I was like, it just seems so much louder to
Yeah.
me and much more. I think I was taking it more seriously than I did other zombie movies, just because it sounded like someone was just yelling in my living room. So that's something I at first I didn't like it growing up, as far as just the way they did it. It's because it just sounded so loud. I'm like, you guys really have to be that loud when you do this? But it adds a good effect, especially to that movie. So I definitely appreciate it more now because I'm like, oh, it adds some, I guess, realism to it.
It's
So
kind of like the Spinal Tap. Turn it up to 11.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm just like, wow. It's almost, yeah, it's a trip, but yeah, I appreciate it more now. So I'm like, oh, it adds the intensity to this scene.
So I have an observation about this film, and I
Mhm.
just so Tisa Farah's character seems to be the main focus of the film,
Right.
and it's like, I get it, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
To me, it's this really the story of the doctor,
Right.
and it's the doctor who is basically losing faith
Hmm.
because his faith is in medicine,
Right.
and he is able to rationalize things, and he's confronted with something that he cannot rationalize.
Right.
And so he, through the course of the film, the fabric of his sanity starts being pulled in threads throughout the course of the film, because no matter what he does, he cannot figure it out. He gets to the point where he's abusive to his wife. He goes from being conflicted about killing somebody to being callous about it. And it's also very interesting the difference between the opening of the film and when he retells the story of what happened to her father.
Right.
Because in the opening of the film, he seems very calculated, steady hand, and he shoots him in the head without hesitation. And, the boat can leave, tell the crew. And in this, when you see his telling of it, he seems much more apprehensive, much more unwilling to do what he knows needs to be done.
Right.
And I'm not sure if that's him misremembering it or if it's him softening the blow for his daughter. What are your thoughts on that?
That makes sense. Actually, he's probably just softening the blow for her. Because yeah, you're right. Because in the beginning, the whole movie, especially when we get to the island, and he's kind of telling everything about it. It is him in disbelief. He's like, nonsense, voodoo, ha ha ha. No, there's something else. It's something medical, of course, ha ha ha. And I get that. I mean, it makes sense. He is a doctor. He's probably like, no. I don't know what drums are doing this, bringing the dead back to life. You can't do that. But yeah, I think I would say he's probably just softening the blow for her. He could have taken the Van Helsing approach, like in Bram Stoker's Dracula, and he's like, "Yes, I just cut off her head, and then I burned her heart or whatever, and fed it to the lions or type of thing."
And goes back to eating without.
Yeah, he's like, oh,
this is really good.
He could have done that approach, but I think, yeah, I mean, I'm sure he was just softening the blow. He's like, oh, I still got to be a gentleman about it.
And what do you think of Peter Welsh? Is it Welsh? West. Peter West.
Oh, Peter West, yeah.
And his fucking, like his to me, his entire delivery is wooden as fuck, with the exception of one moment. And it's when the doctor asks about his wife, and he just gives him that look, and he's just like
it's kind of like that. He's like, get back to my foot, please.
Yeah, I'm really in a lot of pain, and as much as I want to tell you that I saw your wife being eaten, I'd really like to get my foot looked at.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that. I was just watching it again the other night, and I was like, kind of looks like he's like, got anything more than a cotton ball for my leg? This cotton ball ain't doing nothing. But yeah, he is kind of like, he's like, I shouldn't have asked me that. Or wait till you finish my leg, please.
Yeah. Like, is there any other time you could have asked me how you wanted?
Yeah. Hopefully this look will answer the question.
Yeah, it's like, this is fucking awkward, dude. Like, I'm in pain. What the fuck am I doing right now?
Yeah, I was like, you got any stitches for this other than a freaking cotton ball? But yeah.
So I feel like we would be doing this episode a disservice if we did not talk about the shark.
Oh, yeah. The shark. My two fears in one scene. No. Yeah, I mean, I'm scared of sharks, but just like stuff like that in the ocean. But yeah, I mean, that's ballsy. I give them a lot of credit for that. I just remember being a kid, seeing that and being like, what? They're in the water too, and there's sharks. I even thought too, like, is the shark going to turn into a zombie too? I was like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, but that's the shark.
Yeah. And I'm like,
there's the movie right there.
There's a sequel that we deserve.
That is the movie I want to see.
Yeah, I still got to give them credit, man. It's ballsy and dangerous and probably would never happen today. I'm like,
there's no fucking way.
Yeah, it'd be CGI or something. But yeah, I'm just like, I gotta give them credit for that. Give credit to the shark too, I guess, for not actually killing the guy or biting something off.
So this is the point in the show where we get into our ratings of the film. And so we rate it with Reapers. 0 is the lowest, 5 is the highest. How many Reapers are you going to come in for Zombie?
I mean, I would say 5, but I give it a 5. I think it's worthy for a 5. I mean, yeah, I mean, the movie's really, I mean, yeah, I give it a 5. I mean, because the score too, Fabio Frizzi's score is just so fitting for this movie. Yeah, 'cause you get a great score, you get a lot in this movie. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a 5. 5 Reapers.
That's completely fair. I'm going to come in a little bit lower.
Okay.
For me, this is a 4, and
Okay.
I think it's absolutely an integral film within the catalog of zombie films.
Mhm.
I think that some of it's lost in translation.
Right.
I wouldn't say that this is Lucio Fulci's best film,
Mhm.
but I have a lot of fun watching this, and
Yeah.
it's imaginative, ballsy, fucking violent, and it has some fucking terrific, tremendous fucking zombie characters. And so the level of degradation of the bodies at different points also
Mhm.
is, it shows a forethought and an overall appreciation of what the story is that they're telling. So like,
Right.
the old fucking pirate zombies look way more decayed than the zombies that are just patients walking the street, and
Mhm.
that's fucking cool. And again, this is absolutely a valid, absolutely important film. If you've never fucking seen Zombie, sorry, we just spoiled the shit out of it, but it's definitely worth a watch. But Mike,
Yeah.
where can people find you?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. Well, they could definitely find me. Well, you could maybe find me on TikTok. It depends. You could definitely find me on TikTok at Mike the Movie Misfit. I post almost every day, but you may not see it. You
Make
could
sure to
definitely
click
find.
the bell so you get his stuff on
Yeah.
your timeline. That's important.
Definitely find me on Instagram. On Instagram, it's mostly for my movie trivia games, which is pretty much 4 to 5 days a week, just depending. But I do post other things there too, mostly stuff that that won't get seen on TikTok. But for longer in-depth reviews and sometimes funny, you can find me at Mike the Movie Misfit on YouTube.
And if you guys are just here because of Mike, which I do not blame you, but you've enjoyed the conversation, you want to hear more from us, you do that in a couple of different ways. You can start by liking us on Facebook, facebook.com/creaturepod, by following us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at CreaturePod. We're available everywhere as CreaturePod. That's the way to get a hold of us. And we're going to keep this zombie train a running, because next up for us is going to be Train to Busan. And I thought that was a funny play on keeping the train a running. But that is going to do it for us. So for Mike the Movie Misfit and for myself, again, my name is Chunky. This has been another episode of the Creature Features Podcast. Wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube, listen. Someone you trust. Like the one thing that I want to talk about this movie that I didn't necessarily is Lucio Fulci wanting to act in everything.
Oh,
My man is not a great actor. So the only guy in this industry that was dumb enough to hire him was Lucio Fulci. And so like somebody the other day, because I was asked, I did a video on like my favorite poster art, and one of my favorite
okay.
poster arts was Cat in the Brain. And I was
Okay.
like, yeah, it's a tremendous fucking poster, terrible fucking movie.
Yeah.
Like terrible fucking movie. And it's Lucio Fulci basically saying, I would really like to act that.
Yeah.
Maybe if I make a whole movie about me, nobody can blame me but me, right? Am I saying this right? It's just like Lucio Fulci always seemed to and that's one of those things, bro. It's like I call it the Hitchcock disease. And,
Oh yeah.
and it's like all these hacky filmmakers, they're like, Well, Hitchcock put himself in movies, so I'm going to give myself an acting role. I'm looking at you in that Shyamalan.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Like, what the fuck on? So